Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a video where I am reading 3 hotel horror books. I'm going to be reading 2 brand new releases and 1 classic, and I'm pretty excited. I love haunted house horror, and I feel like hotel horror is kind of in the same sort of family. It's a place where you're sleeping, it's a place where you're supposed to feel safe, but a hotel does have a little bit of an added edge because it's not a place that's familiar to you. So when I heard about these 2 brand new releases, I thought it would be a great idea to make a vlog and then also finally get around to reading a classic. So in this vlog, we are going to be reading Psycho by Robert Bloch. This one I have seen the movie. There's a very infamous scene in, I suppose, probably a motel, not a hotel. I feel like that still falls under the general umbrella. So finally going to be getting around to reading a horror classic, and then I will also be reading The Haunting of Room 904 by Erika T. Wurth, and then The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami. Even though all 3 of these books have to deal with hotels at the center of them, they're going to have very different vibes, I feel. We have a classic horror, we have a paranormal horror, and then we also have a sci-fi horror as well. So looking forward to reading these hotel horror books. Let's go ahead and get started with the first book. So I am now 50% of the way through Psycho by Robert Bloch, and this book originally came out in 1959, so I believe that this is the oldest book that I have read so far this year, which is exciting because I am trying to incorporate more horror classics and classic literature into my repertoire this year. So far so good. My familiarity with this one, outside of just I feel like this one is one that is in the zeitgeist. A lot of people kind of know the basic story of Psycho. I have seen the movie and I was intrigued to read the book because I heard even if you've seen the movie already, the book is still a really great experience, and 50% of the way through, I'm definitely feeling that. So in this book, we are following a woman named Mary, and she is going on a very desperate road trip when she gets kind of sidelined, takes a wrong turn, winds up in a place that she is not familiar with because she is so tired. It's a dark and stormy night and she's exhausted. She decides to stop at this motel in the middle of nowhere called the Bates Motel. We are also following Norman Bates, who is the owner of this hotel. Him and his mother, they live in this house that's right next to this hotel or motel, and they have been seeing better days with their business. It used to be a thriving business, and then because of a new highway, the road that the motel sits on is now a back road. So they are struggling financially with the change in scenery and the change of amount of people coming to their motel. And when Mary stops at this hotel, her and Norman's stories become intertwined. That is all I'm going to say about this plot because number 1, this is a short book. It's only 200 pages, at least the copy that I am reading is. And number 2, because the movie is an Alfred Hitchcock movie, you might imagine that there's a lot of suspense, a lot of twists, and the story moves in very surprising and unexpected ways. And that's definitely the same case with the book, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I love who we're following, and overall I am having such a good time with this very classic slasher. Now I know the title of this vlog is hotel horror, and this is a motel. However, at least when I'm thinking of hotel settings and a horror sort of vibe, like what comes to mind for me is of course the movie Psycho. So I definitely wanted to read this classic for this vlog, and I'm having a great time with it so far. Hey vlog, a couple of updates. First of all, got a tattoo. I will pop a picture up here if by the time I finish recording this video, editing this video, if it's healed. It's still very weepy in the stages of healing. It was on my knee, so very spicy spot, but that's what I've been up to. And then also I finished Psycho, and I really enjoyed this one. It's definitely like a classic horror. It's a classic slasher, and I had a really good time reading this one. Even though I've already seen the movie, I really felt like this book still stands on its own so well. I knew the twist, but as I read through this one, I felt like knowing the twist kind of added a lot more understanding, and even kind of made some scenes creepier that I knew the full picture. So if you've seen the movie and you're on the fence about reading the book, I'd say it's short enough and it's strong enough writing and a compelling enough plot that it really does add a lot to what you've already seen in the story. And I really enjoyed this reading experience. I learned that this is the first book in a trilogy, and the second two books do not have anywhere near as high of a rating as this one, but I think they could be fun to go ahead and read. Psycho 2 and Psycho House, and I'm interested. I'm interested in them. I don't think they had any movie adaptations or anything like that, so it would be interesting to see. I know this one is considered a classic, and after having read it, rightfully so, I thought this was very perfectly plotted, and the suspense and the twists that it took, you really felt like the characters that you wanted to root for were in danger, and that's regardless of if you knew all of the twists or not. You really felt that sense of tension throughout this book, and I thought it was really well executed. As for this vlog, I think it works perfectly within the theming because the Bates Motel is really central to this story, and a lot of the most terrifying scenes, the scariest scenes, have to deal with hotel rooms or inside the motel. I keep kind of using them interchangeably. It's a hotel horror vlog, it's a motel, but I think it works really well because some of, and in fact one of the most iconic cinema scenes that of course was taken from this book, takes place in a motel room, and not giving too much away, but I definitely feel like it plays upon the fear of, you see, or at least I see in the United States, I feel like it is very common if you are traveling on the interstate or traveling side roads to see motels like this, to see tiny little towns that once were thriving before the interstate, or even just motels or hotels in the middle of nowhere that look a little run down. And I think the fear of stopping somewhere and then just being not in a safe location, but you don't really have any other options, I felt like this played upon that fear so well. So first book in this vlog was a success. I loved reading this classic slasher book. Now it's on to the next book in the vlog. So I am about 40% of the way through The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami, and this is a very impactful book, so I don't want to say I'm not enjoying it, but this is such an intensely difficult read for me to get through because of the subject matter. So this one is not technically horror. I know this is a vlog about hotel or motel horror, and this one is not. It's literary, it's dystopian, but I picked it because the premise sounds like it would be such a horrific concept and a horrific exploration of freedom or the lack thereof in a dystopia, and I'm really glad that I picked this book for this vlog because, again, it's not a traditional horror, but I think the things that are explored in here are super horrific, and it makes a really good book for this video. So this book is set in the United States in the not so distant future, and we are following main character Sarah, and she is returning from a trip, a work trip, and she's so excited to see her husband and her twin babies. And when she's at the airport, she gets stopped by security, by customs. She's very confused. She's done this trip. She's done international travel a lot for her job. She's not sure why she's being pulled over and questioned. So she's more frustrated than worried at this point. She thinks it's all a big administrative error. However, agents from the Risk Assessment Administration pull her aside and they say that she is a danger to herself and others because they have determined that she is a future threat and she needs to be put into a retention center immediately. In this dystopian futuristic America, the government has access to pretty much every citizen's data, all of their biometric data, all of their health data, everything about them, where they live, where they work, where they go to school, what paths they take, because this country is so surveilled. Everyone's identity is very plugged in and online. It's easy to access, and in a surveillance state where we do have things like phones and ring cameras and just surveillance everywhere, it is very easy to compile all of this information about its citizens. And the Risk Assessment Administration does this and is able to access all of this data, put it in an AI algorithm, and that algorithm is supposed to unbiasedly predict which people are going to be a risk or a threat to safety. So this book feels very much like the movie Minority Report in a lot of ways, but Sarah is detained not because of anything that she's done, but because she's had some violent dreams that this algorithm has now determined that she is a risk to causing harm to her husband. So she is taken away to one of these retention centers and she is promised she's going to stay there for 21 days, calm down. They're going to assess her and make sure that she is not a threat to others. All of the agents are like, it's no big deal. This is for your safety, everyone's safety. You just have to comply. And so Sarah does, because legally she has no other choice. And as she's at this facility, she starts learning that it's going to be harder than she thought to get out of this system, because there are very strict rules at this facility that govern behavior. And if you do not do all of them to a T, you get time added onto your sentence, because the overseers, the workers at this establishment can say, no, she's still a threat to others. And you start to see, as she's trying to follow all of these rules, some of them a lot more arbitrary than others, she starts to see some guards, some of the workers kind of taking advantage of their position and starting to enforce these increasingly inane rules and getting her in trouble. And now it turns out at the very beginning of this book, you find this out within the first couple of pages or so, that what was supposed to be just a few weeks has turned into almost a year for Sarah, and she is not an exception. So we are just exploring Sarah, but also the group of women that she is with. So we are following them in this facility, the Dream Hotel, and this is kind of a mocking moniker that some of the staff members have called this. They call it a hotel, they call it a Hilton. There's a lot of animosity between these workers and the women who are being kept here, and that's a really big thing that we're exploring throughout this book. And it's such a scary situation because Sarah has not done anything. She just had dreams. So is that even something that someone can be detained for? Well, the algorithm says that yes, she has a higher risk, so she's just staying here for indefinitely, it seems. So we're following these women and watching just these abuses that are happening, and it really does feel like a critique on a prison system. But then we are also getting some really great commentary about just how connected and how plugged in we are, and how much of our data is accessible to these governmental institutions. And is that a good thing? Like, how much of yourself, how much of your privacy is equated to your freedom? So this is definitely a very, very hard read. It's so easy to see things in our society where this author has drawn her dystopian from, because there are companies like Palantir, for example, that are trying to not in this way, not with the dream hotels and everything like that, but the person who owns Palantir has said that he wants to make like our DNA essentially our passport, and have everyone's data and health statistics and DNA in a governmental system where we can access that as a passport instead instead of a paper passport. So just examining like how much of your personal data should be personal and how much of our increasingly private lives we are posting online, and just letting companies have the rights to, and how much of that is going to be a problem and a slippery slope, and really exploring freedom and freedom to live a private life. So while this one is not a traditional horror, it's a dystopian that I feel like definitely fits within that category, because it's really awful. Like my stomach just sinks every single chapter that I get into this one, because we do have traditional chapters, but between the chapters we'll have these interstitials where we'll get like emails from Sarah to her husband or Sarah to her lawyer, and then we're also getting memos of this staff as they are talking about the people in their care and talking about the ways that they enforce these rules and just their attitude towards the people in their care. So it's just a really, really grim picture that's being painted here, and I am enjoying it. It's definitely very thought-provoking. There's actually a quote that I had to highlight. I think I maybe put it in B-roll, but one of the quotes that really got me is, quote, that no matter how unjust the system is, she is expected to submit to it in order to prove that she deserves to be free of its control, end quote. So yeah, it's bringing up a lot of great questions about data surveillance and privacy, and doing it in a dystopian way that feels like a brand new idea. I know I mentioned like Minority Report, but the way that this is being explored in this book is just very fascinating, very dark. So I am going to finish this one up because it is a shorter one. It's very heavy though, so I am taking it at a little bit of a slower pace. This is one where I feel like I cannot speed through, because I just need a moment after some scenes to really digest and really feel the horror of what has just happened to Sarah. So far so good. I should finish this one up soon. So I did finish The Dream Hotel, and just a couple of notes before I get into my final review. The author's name is actually Laila Lalami. I've been pronouncing that wrong, so my apologies. And then the main character's name is actually Sarah, not Sarah. I've been pronouncing it Sarah. It's spelled in the book S-A-R-A, and all of the people that I know with that name go by Sarah, but it is Sarah for this book. I listened to an audiobook sample just to double check the pronunciation, and I'm really glad I did. So now that that is out of the way, this is a book that I did really enjoy overall. Just a couple of notes. There is one instance we get one POV switch, and it's only a chapter long, and for that one I do understand what it brings to the story and how it propels the story along. However, I think it would have been a little bit more impactful had we been switching POVs throughout the whole entire story, or it just did not like be there, because this whole entire book we are following Sarah, and then we just get a handful of pages that are in someone else's perspective, and that's the only time that happens. It kind of takes me out of the story, kind of changes the progression of the events a little bit. So I understood like what happened there, and there were some reveals and some revelations, but I do wish that would have been handled just a little bit differently, as well as I feel this way about a lot of dystopian shorter fiction. This book is less than 300 pages, and a lot of the times when it comes to a dystopia where an idea is being expressed or it's a very specific commentary, they have a tendency to tell and not show, and that did end up being the case for this book. I do agree with the commentary and what is being said. However, I do wish that it would have been a little more ambiguous and led the reader to that point and let them discover that for themselves rather than just stating it on the page. But overall, I thought this was very harrowing, and definitely it's a literary dystopia, again, not a horror, but it's really horrific. So if you mostly read horror, I still think you would get a lot out of this one. It's definitely a scary cautionary tale about the ways in which data collection and having our data no longer be private is influencing our private lives lives and our freedom. In terms of this being a hotel horror, it definitely has those horrific elements of kind of an institutionalized place where there's a lot of accommodations, you're staying with a lot of strangers, and there are references, like one of the residents mentions the Hotel California song where you can check in but you can never leave, and the people working there make lots of comments and jokes about it being a hotel. So it's not necessarily your average run-of-the-mill hotel or motel for the purposes of this vlog, but I definitely enjoyed my time reading it. So we are moving on to the third and final book of this vlog, and that would be The Haunting of Room 904 by Erika T. Wurth. This is an author that I have read from before. I really enjoyed White Horse, and I think this is pretty inspired by Stephen King. White Horse had a lot of references to Stephen King, and Stephen King has a really great hotel horror short story, and I feel like this could have some references to that, so I have a feeling this is going to be a very chilling time. So I am now about 40% of the way through The Haunting of Room 904, and it is going okay so far. I'm not loving it as much as I thought I would, which is a little bit of a disappointment. Not to say that it's not good, but I absolutely loved White Horse by this author, and this one, even though the subject matter would, I feel like on paper, be a better fit for me, be a perfect read for me, it's just not gripping me in the same way that one did, but it is going well so far overall. So in this book, we are following main character Olivia, and she can see and communicate with spirits. So she makes her living as a paranormal investigator, helping people get rid of various conjurings and possessions and hauntings in their homes. However, this was not always the case. She actually grew up a skeptic, and it was her sister Naichi who was the one who could see and correspond with spirits, and Olivia was always the doubter. However, 5 years before this story starts, her sister dies by suicide, and after that, all of the powers seemingly flow into Olivia. So now Olivia can see and correspond with spirits and is making that her life's work. Olivia is Apache, and she uses Apache traditions and Catholicism, a blend of both of those and some other practices as well, to help her clients and help her communicate with the other side. At the beginning of this story, she is actually contacted by the hotel, the Brown Palace, to help them with a paranormal problem that they have been having. This is a very close case to Olivia because that is the location where her sister died. She finds out that her sister died in room 904, and she was not the only woman who had died in that room. It turns out in this hotel, every 5 years, a woman mysteriously wakes up in room 904 and dies soon afterwards by suicide, seemingly, but something seems very, very off. The hotel is really convinced that it's haunted because of the strange situations that occur with the women getting to this hotel room, and they hope that by hiring a paranormal expert that they can stop this bloody cycle for good. So Olivia accepts, and as she's diving deeper into the secrets of her family and also the hotel trying to stop this cycle, it seems as if this hotel and the events that have happened in this hotel may be connected to the history of Denver and before Denver was actually a city. It's a good thing that Olivia is very connected to her Apache ancestry, because that seems like it is going to be the key in figuring out this mystery, figuring out how to stop this cycle of bloodshed because of the events that happened before Denver was colonized as a city. So there is the premise of this one. What I like is that it starts chapter 1, the supernatural, the paranormal is real, the main characters believe it, you see scary things happening. You immediately jump into, we're following Olivia on a house call dealing with a possessed item and a woman who owns it. So you know that these paranormal events are real, they're happening, they're on page. There are some very, very creepy moments. So I do like like that. However, I feel like this book is just going so fast for me. I feel like it needs to be longer. The amount of time, like I'm 40% of the way in, and I feel like we're so far into the plot that I just want more time to build the story up, take our time with the characters, and just go at a little bit of a slower pace than where we're going. I also feel like if there were more pages, that would kind of help with some of the issues I'm having with characterization. All of the characters except for Olivia at this point in time feel very one-dimensional, and it honestly kind of feels at points that the author doesn't trust you to remember what all the characters are and their place in the story, because it'll be Olivia's roommate or her best friends, and every single time they re-enter into a new scene, there's a new introduction of who they are to Olivia, what they do, and I don't understand why we keep needing to be reintroduced to these characters that we already know. And then just another thing that's kind of got me interested to see where this story is going to go is that it feels very intentionally convenient, and the characters even mention this as well. Olivia mentions this as well, is that she's seeing all of these coincidences and all of these things that make her feel like she is being drawn towards this case, and it's just every single person she talks to, every single interaction, even every single like house call case that she has before this main case ties into this main case in such a way that the characters are even commenting that it all feels very convenient. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is there's not a lot of time for us to sit with mysteries or how pieces intersect, because it just feels like we're going from person to person, location to location, and getting the exact right information and answers that Olivia needs. So I do wish there was a little more suspense there when it comes to that. I do think there have been some very creepy and chilling moments, and I do love a story that is just very overtly paranormal. So for me, the story is scary. It's a very scary setup, and the hotel horror aspects are very chilling, and I'm liking that. It's a very creative and original story. However, I'm hoping in the latter portion of this book, the characterization improves, as well as just the pace. It feels very breakneck, and I do wish it would slow down a little bit more and fill in some of those areas that I feel like are just a little bit lacking at this point in the story. But I am very interested and intrigued to see how this one wraps up. So I finished The Haunting of Room 904, and unfortunately this one overall is a disappointment to me. The first couple of chapters were really engaging, and I was really excited for this paranormal investigator sort of story, but it really fell flat, which is very unfortunate. I know I had high expectations for this one because of how much I liked White Horse, but I just felt like this one, really towards the end especially, felt like a draft. It felt very rushed. The scenes, especially towards the end, the scenes, they didn't have any cohesion. We just jumped from one scene to the next without any transitions, and that was a little jarring. And towards the end as well, some of the really important action happened off page, and our main character Olivia would catch us, the reader, up on the things that had happened, which I thought was a strange choice because we want to see those things happen. One of those things that happened was an action, an event they've been trying to solve the whole entire book, and that piece of the puzzle they did off page, which I don't understand that reasoning. So this just felt very incomplete in a lot of ways. The premise had so much potential, especially at the beginning, but I just felt like there was a lot that just felt so incomplete by the end of this. There were about 4 different subplots that all needed more page time. I feel like maybe if we focused on 2 of those, maybe this could have gone better, and it needed to be longer to really let those elements breathe, and it felt very unfinished. I do feel like this could be a good movie, and I wonder if that's some of my frustration with a lot of this book, is that it did feel at points like it was a movie pitch, and unfortunately I just didn't end up loving this one, which is a bummer because at the beginning of this vlog vlog, if I had to pick a book that I thought I would enjoy the most, it would have been this one. So unfortunately, that was a pretty disappointing end to the vlog, but I did read 2 books that I can really readily recommend. I had the most fun with Psycho. It's a classic that I feel like still holds up and is a pretty great example of a slasher. And then The Dream Hotel is a really fascinating and very timely dystopian, because I think as this video goes up, YouTube is starting to roll out their ID verification, where they're using an AI system to determine if people are underage or overage, and if they determine that they're underage, they need to provide credit card information or an ID, which I don't love. I think that like companies don't need to do that. Companies don't need to have your ID. I think that's a slippery slope, requiring certain people to put their ID into a system where we see data leaks from companies and from websites all of the time. So that's a little nerve-wracking. I know it's not every single person, but if they have a lot of success with this, who's to say that they're not just going to require every single user to, when they join up with a YouTube account, put in their ID information, which I'm really not comfortable with. And I really hope that is not the way that the world, the online world, is going, because I don't feel comfortable putting my ID onto, like, I don't feel comfortable uploading it to social media sites to prove that I am eligible to look at their content. It feels way more like overreach if they're actually worried about kids. There are other steps they could take, and one of those including being parents, actually parenting their kids. So this one does feel very relevant in the online era that we are on the cusp of, it feels like. So overall, I did have a good time with this vlog reading some hotel horror. If you have any recommendations for hotel horror books, definitely leave them down below. But thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!